Welcome to the OBR Streaming Network. This is a brand new edition of Things I Think I Know about the Cleveland Browns. My name is Brad Ward, and the man next to me is the always spectacular Quincy Carrier. Follow him on Twitter at Quen, KWEN_C. What's going on, Q?
Just covering two teams, having a fun time, making the best of it.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Cavs are a lot of fun right now.
Absolutely.
And we'll talk a little bit more. It actually becomes a little bit of a topic we'll talk about later on in the show. But I want to start the show tonight with you. Post-Combine. Let's start there. Post-Combine, anything big, any revelations for you post-Combine? It feels like the national media caught up with like all of our thoughts on Sanders a little bit, and like there's this consensus now that there's quite a bit of separation between Ward and Sanders. A lot of us have been here for a while talking that way, but it feels like the rest of the country and the mainstream media has caught up with that idea once they all got in one city for a weekend. But, anything else that you came out of the Combine feeling different about, or any revelations from that?
Yeah, we're starting to see the effects of the pre-draft process, right? It kind of reminds me of 2014, where as the process, like I remember we ended the 2014 bowl season. Teddy Bridgewater was propped as the number one overall pick on a lot of mock drafts, and he was the number one quarterback on a lot of big boards.
Yeah.
And then the pre-draft process comes up and people are like, well, actually, Johnny, he has big hands and he can throw the ball. He has a whip of an arm. And then, Derek Carr gets in there, right? Derek Carr ran like 4.69. People forget at his combine, and, had all the arm talent in the world. And then the next thing you know, Teddy Bridgewater is seen as quarterback 3 to some people, or even quarterback 2, because he doesn't have the type of game that really holds up well in the pre-draft process. Yeah. I think a similar thing is happening to Shedeur. That's why I can comp him to Teddy Bridgewater. And Cam Ward, whether you think he's better than Shedeur or not, I tend to be in the camp where I prefer somebody whose flaws are a bit more predictable in somebody like Shedeur than somebody who's a bit more unpredictable in Cam Ward. But I can see why the pre-draft process would favor him because he has those wow moments from an arm talent perspective that no other prospect in this class even comes close to replicating. So yeah, it's interesting how these guys will have the draft process affect them, how some of these guys will benefit from it. Sometimes you can predict it, sometimes you can't. And this is one where it looks like whatever people are getting when they get a closer look at Shedeur, and this is one thing that we've been talking about for a while, whether you like Shedeur or not, you have to admit that because of how he's been presented by the Sanders family, you always feel like you're looking at him through an obscured view, right? Like you never feel like you're getting that raw look at him as a prospect. It always feels like they're trying to play games with you. And that has its benefits because you might be able to highlight some of his strengths that way. But I think it also knocks back the other way where you let scouts' imaginations go wild and they're just like, well, why can't we see him do this? Why can't we see him do that? Why can't he go out there? Well, he can't outthrow Will Howard, right? Like, why isn't he out there throwing? And this goes back to arguments that I've had. Even though I think Shedeur's the best quarterback in this class for me, I don't think he's the level of prospect that should be sitting out of anything. Cam Ward, too, which he's getting away with it, but I don't think either of these quarterbacks are at the point to where they should be sitting these things out when we've seen Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen way better prospects, Jalen Hurts, way better prospects than these two, have to go out there and prove it. And I think maybe that's something that's rubbing people the wrong way. It's like, why this guy don't think he got to like show us that he's top tier, right? He acting like Trevor Lawrence, right? I think that all comes into it. Maybe something's rubbing people the wrong way because this fall is a bit more steep than I imagine. And it seems to be, it's weird too, Brad, because like as people are consistently putting Cam Ward number 1 here, they're not changing where he is on their big board. So it doesn't tell me that their evaluations of him as a player has changed. It's just the evaluation and the willingness to take Shedeur and the appetite for a quarterback in the top 5 of this draft. I think people are realizing just isn't there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the interviews was intriguing too, like the way the interviews were interpreted, that, Cam Ward came across from all reporting, very well in the interview parts. Now, Shedeur rubbed some teams the wrong way. He's more boisterous, confident, and the act aloof at times was described by some teams. Now, other teams described him as confident and open and used positive words to describe the same things, right?
It's Baker Mayfield all over again, ain't it? Right?
Depends.
It's what flavor of person that you are depends on how that Kool-Aid gonna taste to you, right?
Exactly. So, Browns were one, I think, that described him as confident and open, and they liked, pretty much use positive words to describe it. But it's positive and negative words that mean the same thing. It's just how they're viewing it, right? And so who does have an appetite for that as well, and everything that comes with that. So it's interesting. I wanted to ask you before we get into some of the Myles Garret stuff here, what do you think Tennessee is going to do at 1? Because I just get the feeling that they don't know for sure what they want to do yet, and that's okay. But it leaves everybody else or they've done a good job at least spreading different ideas about what they're going to do. I kind of think they want to trade out.
I feel like you can smell the rookie GM on the Tennessee Titans right now, because like a lot of what's out here feels like first year GM level smoke, where it's like it's too obvious that it's coming from Tennessee. Like you shouldn't be able to tell the direction the smoke is coming from. And all the stuff about the Browns wanting to trade up to 1 feels like it came out of Tennessee pretty obviously, because why would the Browns let anybody know they're interested in Cam Ward if they don't have the control over that pick? I think there's an outside chance of something truly shocking happening here at 1, right? Because you have all the recipes for something shocking to happen at the number 1 overall pick, because you have a team that is clearly trying to trade back. They have a first-year GM. They have no direction on where this team's going, and a first-year GM that does not really know what direction he wants this thing to go into. Not saying that this guy's going to be bad or not. It's just like there's no direction on that Tennessee roster in the way that, like, if you look at Cleveland's roster, you can, they got this, that, let's just get a run game, right? Like, let's do that, or let's get a quarterback. There's a direction there that makes sense for the Browns to go down. With Tennessee, there's nothing there. Yeah, they need to answer quarterback, but let me tell you something. That ain't gonna solve nothing for Tennessee this year. Like if their quarterback plays that much better or marginally better than Will Levis, it's like, I don't think it really matters, right? Like they're not that close.
They're further away.
Yeah, they definitely have time to spare. So I wouldn't be surprised. And I'm not saying this is likely. I'm not saying this is probably gonna happen, but it feels like the same recipe that resulted in Anthony Bennett going number 1 overall. With the Cleveland Cavaliers.
So who is that in this draft?
Where it's like a team, Shamar Stewart, right? Like that's absolutely like who would feel the most. Like if you took him at 1, I think if you take Shamar Stewart at 7, it's different. But Shamar Stewart, if you take him at 1, feels like you're drafting a guy because he feels like a body that would go number 1 overall. In the same way the Cavs were like, we need somebody who's 6'8", can jump and can dunk and maybe shoot, that's 200 something pounds because we just lost LeBron, right? I think that is something that wouldn't shock me if it happened. That would be shocking because they might just go, hey, we're going to stink. We want the most upside as possible. This guy's splits are similar to Myles Garret and they went to the same school. Let's go take that guy, right? And you get something unconventional happening at 1. But I think this is a year where, like, I mean, the same thing happened with Jacksonville, right? Where they didn't take
Walker.
Where they took Walker instead of Hutch, right? So I think we're going down the direction of possibly seeing something like that, because I don't know if there's going to be a real market for the number one overall pick. I think we'll find out by the end of this week, right? This next upcoming week, if there was a market for number one, because I think that team would make that trade before the league new year starts. Because if you're going to draft Cam Ward, you want to know that you're going to draft Cam Ward and then build your whole offseason around that, right? So if the Browns are truly intent on doing that, or the Giants are truly intent on doing that, they're probably going to do it before the start of the league new year. So that will manifest itself within the next week. But if I don't hear anything about a trade in the next like 10 days, I think that Tennessee is going to be stuck with that pick there, because they're not going to get approximate value for it. And they're just going to take the guy they wanted, right? And I think this might be a situation where they wanted to trade back and take Shamar Stewart, but they might just decide, let's just take him anyway, even though it's number one.
That would be shocking for sure, especially a guy like that with the athletic profile, the lack of production. He's a interesting prospect. The thing I keep coming back to is it's like, okay, Carter. I've been like on it's either Carter, Ward, or trade back. I don't think they want to go quarterback this class because, like you said, they're further away than the other teams that need there. I think they want to trade back, and the Browns would present them with the ability to trade back and still get Carter if they love him, where I don't think anybody else can offer that. If you were the Browns, would you give up 2 3s? If you say the Browns love Ward, would you give up 2 3s to go up in one spot and get him?
It's hard for me to answer this question because I do not love Cam Ward, right? So to me, 2 3s is high, especially if you're moving up one spot. Like, you're not really sacrificing. You didn't want Cam Ward. Like, 2 3s would be a lot to pay for him. Now, if they truly
disagree with the separation from Ward to Shador, you have Shador higher.
I think there's a little, like, I think I can see how there's a separation there. I just don't think either of these guys are great prospects. You know what I mean? Like, I there might be a difference between there might be a gap there, but I don't think the gap is anything that's going to net you a franchise quarterback on the high end either way. I think Cam is somebody who could be a plus tier starter. I think the same is true for Shador Sanders in their future. But I think Cam, he's going to have moments where he puts highlights out there that looks like franchise guy stuff, but he's also going to have lowlights that drag him back down. Sure. I see him as similar to Baker Mayfield, right? If you're asking me how I feel about him, it's similar to how I felt about Baker, similar flaws and positives to Baker Mayfield. With Shador, it's more or less kind of like a less talented Jared Goff kind of situation, right? Where it's like, oh yeah, maybe he could be a tier 3 guy, right? Stay above average there. Both these guys, I feel more comfortable picking late first than early first, let alone trading up. But if I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of the Browns and they're saying, we love this dude, and they're much higher on him than me.
Yeah.
And they want to give up 2 firsts, 2/3 for a team that's already given up enough draft capital over the years. I think you got to be pretty damn sure, right?
You better know, yeah.
Yeah, but if you feel that strongly about it, and it's not because you want a quarterback, it's because you love Cam Ward that much and you want to do it, I'm not going to encourage the decision.
Right.
But I'm going to see how it happens. I'm going to see it out. I'm going to give it a fair shake, right?
Sure.
Because at least you're taking somebody you believe in. And if you do trade up the what, I feel better about that than if you go, well, we need a quarterback, take 1 and 2, right? Because I'm like, is there even a plan for that guy? So I have my mixed feelings about it. Me personally, if I were the GM, I wouldn't want to do it. But if they felt that way about the quarterback room, and that's where their scouting and analytics are telling them they need to go, all right, give it a shot, give it a shot, but really do everything you can not to be wrong, because boy, I don't feel great about it.
Yeah, man, it's tough because if you take a guy at 1 or 2, you're spending your next 3 years committed to that, making that pick work, right? Whereas if you take somebody at 32 or 33 or whatever, you can move off of that easier if it doesn't work out. All right, let's talk about Myles Garret. Quincy, as the saga continues here, Garrett's camp has gone public this morning. First, Tom Pelissero had a tweet. Browns star Myles Garret recently requested a meeting with owner Jimmy Haslam, who declined to speak amidst Garrett's trade request, per sources. Both sides are dug in. Cleveland refuses to even discuss a trade, while Garrett is preparing to miss games if he's not traded. That was from Tom Pelissero. Then Mary Kay followed that up quickly with Jimmy Haslam told Myles Garret to talk to GM Andrew Berry when Garrett asked to meet with him amid his trade request. And then later on, we had Aditi weighing in. And this one, you make of it what you will. When Myles Garret was playing through injuries to both feet, a thigh, and Achilles this year, he told our NFL on CBS crew how bothered he was that certain Browns teammates weren't giving better energy. He said he called out offensive teammates for their body language, and when I asked if he was so irritated I didn't just have surgery, he said, I want to win. This is my purpose until it's not. Which is to say, one, this has been brewing and isn't only about the quarterback, and two, I may not know another superstar who could so quickly pivot to another purpose. Garrett has never defined himself solely by football in a game of chicken. This is a man who could easily go write anime or live abroad until he gets his way. I don't know about all that. But so this whole thing is wild. First, thoughts on that him trying to go above Barry's head to Haslam. It's an NBA move.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why he tries it, right? The Browns seem pretty set in their ways. He seems pretty set in their ways, right? He wants to negotiate something, so he's going to try to do what a lot of people in Cleveland have done successfully, which is create chaos. Go over somebody's head, and speak to them and try to force Jimmy to force Andrew to do something. Now, Brad, I think that part of this story underrated, because again, we're talking about potentially losing the best player we've had since 99.
Sure.
Deservedly so underrated. Really good thing to hear. That Jimmy has resisted the temptation to meddle in that way.
That's what I thought too. Yep.
That, to me, I heard that and I was like, oh, finally. Right? Like, that is significant. Now, what it does for this situation, I have no clue. But it does make me feel better about how they are operating as an organization, right? No doubt. If we're trying to figure out, is it dysfunctional? Is it not? Most people who play for the Cleveland Browns tell you it's not dysfunctional, right? Myles is the only one trying to paint that picture as it is dysfunctional. And this tells me right here, this is the same thing Baltimore would have done if Myles tried to talk to ownership there. This is the same thing that New England would have done when they had Bill Belichick. This is the same thing that Pittsburgh does with Mike Tomlin. This is the same thing that good organizations do, which is they don't allow players to circumvent the chain of command to go straight to ownership. And they set that boundary early on. Now, that's going to cause problems with somebody like Myles, who was there in the franchise before that boundary existed, right? Like, those are the players that it's going to cause friction with when you do that. But having that be the case going forward is not a bad thing. Think about all the dumb stuff this organization has done or tried to do because somebody decided to talk to Jimmy. Like the whole Hugh Jackson era was somebody trying to talk to Jimmy. We almost traded the pick that netted us Nick Chubb because somebody tried to talk to Jimmy to trade for UFL Hall of Famer AJ McCarron.
Yes.
Right. Like, that almost happened. Sachi had to then circumvent them and get fired and just decide not to send a trade in.
Yeah. The fax machine debacle.
Which, by the way, if you're going to circumvent your GM, why would you leave it up to him to send the paperwork in? I don't know, but I'm glad that Sachi had that moment of civil disobedience, which ended up being a net positive for the Cleveland Browns. So hearing that part, that he tried to go around Andrew Berry and they said no.
Yeah.
They shut that down. And that apparently frustrated him immensely. Yeah, cool. You can live with that. And I understand why that's going to frustrate Myles, because again, those boundaries didn't always exist for him pre-2020, but that's the world he lives in now, right? So, we made this mistake. Baker Mayfield was circumventing on general managers to get the coach that he want, or not general managers, head coaches and other decisions to get, like, this stuff does not end well when you have that kind of a process. So that part is a positive takeaway here. It also tells me there is absolutely zero desire for the Cleveland Browns to do this, to trade him. And that this is not something that's going to be easily circumvented if you're Myles. Like, Myles basically he was trying to hit the nuclear button, right? He was trying to hit we talked about what's the red button? He tried to go to Jimmy and hit the red button, and he got thwarted.
Yep.
So it might seem like, because this news is coming out from Myles' perspective, that this is something where Myles has the upper hand. And look, there's probably going to be frustration long term here. I don't expect these two to be together for the rest of their career, right? Like, there's eventually going to be a breakup here. But as far as like the Browns getting their way for this season and maybe the next, like, in order to do this on their own terms, this gives them the upper hand, in my opinion, now, because what we're hearing, he's floating out there the idea that he's going to retire, right? That's basically what that whole report was from Aditi was about, right? Was, I might not play anymore. I'm going to quit. I'm going to get surgery on my foot. And the Browns seem fully adept to say, hey, man, do it. We'll see you next year. You're still going to be under contract, right? So look, this thing is going to be, no matter how it resolves itself, it's going to get hotter and hotter, because look, they're going to have to resolve something, some part of this negotiation by the start of the league new year, or by March 16th. So it's going to keep heating up, right? And we'll see if it gets to the point where guys are holding out of camp. Certainly feels like it can be at this point, right? And look, people called me crazy when I said this the first time. Him talking about how he did not feel like he could win a championship in Cleveland, that was him throwing his teammates under the bus, right? Like, it was a polite way of doing it, but it was. And now it's becoming a lot more obvious, isn't it?
Very obvious today in Aditi's tweet, where he's talking about individual players that he was questioning their effort, offensive players' body language. He is just freely throwing them under the bus now. There's no disguise anymore. So,
yeah, I mean, Jed Wills ain't gonna be here, brother. I think that's half the complaint.
I know, sure.
But in all seriousness, like, we know Myles has been irritated with the offense. The offense hasn't been great since he's been at this Hall of Fame level of play, starting at 2022. He's been at a Hall of Fame level of play. Well, 2023, really, because the defense wasn't good in 2022 under Joe Woods. So ever since Jim Schwartz has gotten here, what's held the Cleveland Browns back has been offense, right? Even in the playoffs, the year they won 11 games, what held them back ultimately was offense, and their inability to be able to maintain possession. Now, I would argue that sometimes we become too quarterback focused, right?
Yeah.
And we think that quarterback is the only way you can improve the offense. I wonder, how much can you improve the offense if you just stop living on this thought that you've been living on with Deshaun Watson, that you're going to have a franchise quarterback? I think the Browns could be a significantly better team if they improve their run game and they get somebody at quarterback who's going to manage the game at a decent level. And I think you have some options of guys who could go out there and manage the game at a decent level here. But this frustration with Myles, it's real, right? It's not just about the money, which I've made the argument a solution to this is probably going to have to require the Browns to make some level of compromise about the control that Myles has on his future, right? Like, money's not alone going to be able to solve this, in my eyes. And In order to do that, you're probably going to give up like a no trade clause for him, or probably a no trade clause for him, or shorten the terms of the deal for him, right? Like you're going to have to do something along those lines to be able to mitigate him, because they want something out of this, right? This is what's been clear to me. I don't know if it's been clear to you, Brad. This feels like they want something renegotiated at the very least.
Yeah, it's tough because, like, they can't do it because of the financial ramifications right now, or else I think they would listen to offers more seriously. Like if there wasn't the $39 million dead cap, if they could get an offer now, like from a team, any team that, considers themselves a contender, and it was a solid offer, like I could understand them taking that more. But because the money literally crushes, is pulling the Jenga piece, as you said before, the last Jenga piece on the bottom out, or the house of cards falls around the financial setup that Andrew Berry has going here. Like he has set up Deshaun's money in a way that they have enough to still be somewhat aggressive this offseason. Myles' trade takes all that away. It wipes all that out, right? And they become basically instant rebuild mode, or and so now if you do it after June 1st, I don't know how much that changes. Can they wiggle by with that? But it's still crippling you to a certain degree.
I don't even think the Browns would be willing to do this if the contract thing wasn't part of this, right? Like it's definitely a part of it that plays now, but I think they see this way, Brad. We had one bad season. Yeah. We are not about to be reactionary or allow you to be reactionary and trade and get rid of our best player just because we had one bad season. I think that's how they see it. They're not going to overreact, and they think overreacting would be trading Myles or allowing Myles to force his way out of Cleveland this offseason. I think this is really what it's about. They're like, hey, no, this is not the terms in which we're willing to let you go. So you're going to have to wait this one out if you're Myles Garret, right? Like, I think that's where the core of this is one, they don't want to trade Myles Garret, but two, they definitely don't want to trade Myles Garret in a reaction to a bad season that they feel like is possibly an outlier for this team. Yeah. We'll see if that's true.
Yeah, we'll see if it's true. I agree with you. I believe they feel that way, and the financial ramifications, and on top, which makes it impossible for them to do it. But also the main thing here is too, I don't know if there's any compensation that any team's coming forward with, which you would consider even close to worth Myles Garret. It would be hard for a team to come forward with that.
Not a contending team. There's nobody with extra first round picks, right? Like nobody has plus value. Nobody's willing to trade you a quarterback to get Myles Garret. Nobody can offer you anything that would approach the value of him. And, they're just not going to be like, I don't think they're willing to do it for a lot of reasons that make a ton of sense for Cleveland to not be willing to do it. And you know what? I'm going to stand on a different side of this. I think it's a good thing that something like this pops up and we're not the first to fold and go, oh, Myles isn't happy here. Let's just go trade him away, right? And let's go give you away, right? Let's just be a pushover as an organization and just give you away for nothing. And then we sit here and we watch ESPN for the next 10 years. And every time the Browns pop up, they're talking about the Myles trade, right? And this on top of the Deshaun. No, I like that they're at least showing some backbone and some fight that, Myles might want to be out of here, but we're not going to leave. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're united on this. And look, it's frustrating as hell to deal with as a fan, especially when you're looking at them signaling that they're not going to bring Nick Chubb back. You might lose Myles. It's a trying time for a lot of Browns fans. So I understand their frustration, and I'm not saying you got to be 100% behind this, but if I'm looking at this from my perspective, I don't mind that the Browns are willing to be difficult and play hardball on this request, because I have seen this organization be really soft about these kind of things in the past and not get what they should have gotten out of it. So if you're going to trade Myles, you're setting the precedent out here that you better blow me away with the compensation, right? That we're not just going to push over and fold over one thing, and we're willing to go all the way with this, which I think will be better for the franchise in the long run. In the short term, it's going to suck, right? Not going to be fun. Not going to be a fun couple weeks. Probably not going to be a fun couple months after this, right? Hopefully there's an end in sight for this, but the longer this continues, the uglier to get. The more and more of these wounds will become obvious to the people on the team, and the more complicated their feelings about having this dude back are going to become. So you hope to end this thing sooner than later. But I like that they're playing the hardball with it. Myles is trying to respond with playing hardball, and we'll see. But I just don't want them to go into this situation taking it lightly, and it doesn't seem like that's the case. And I think there's a couple of developments here that are going to be hard to see the positive of in the moment because of the heavy nature of what we're talking about. But I do think will bode good, but will bear sweet fruit at the end of the day, because it's progress in an organization that has usually responded to this kind of thing with fear and instability, and they're not responding to this kind of thing with that kind of response, which I do think is positive.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good point. The other thing I'll bring up on this, the last thing I'll bring up on this is the timing of it. The timing of this coming the Friday before the league year begins is certainly a key factor here, because as they go and we go into the tampering period on Monday and free agency, if the Browns are spending competitively, which I expect them to do to a certain level, Q, I think that just tells Myles camp even more we're not moving. Like, the more they spend, the more they are active in free agency, the more it stamps in the ground that they're not moving. Because at that point, it almost becomes impossible to do in general. So I think that the timing of his actions today, certainly not by accident, with the league year coming and free agency deals that'll be starting to be announced on Monday.
I don't know what's going to happen next week, because next week's going to be a huge week for this. All I do know is that it's going to be a very long weekend in Berea for the people who work for the Cleveland Browns, and it's going to be an even longer weekend in Houston or LA, wherever Myles Garret is situated right now with his agents, because it's going to be a dogfight. And a lot of that fighting is going to happen this week, because it benefits both sides to be able to figure this out earlier than later, whatever they're going to do. And we'll see what happens here. We'll see if somebody becomes more willing to walk to the table. We'll see if something gets done. We'll see if nothing gets done, and the Browns just operate as usual, which I think is their plan as of right now, is to just, all right, we're just going to operate as if you ain't got this trade request out there, which I think is fair, because they don't have any intention on trading Myles Garret. And if they're going to trade Myles Garret, it infinitely makes more sense to do after this season than it does right now. Yeah, 100%.
Does his ownership with the Cavs, Pete brings this up, in the Cavs playoff run, like, how does that impact this? Like, he's not going to be able to go stand on the sideline and be a hero if this is going on as they go into the playoffs in this Cavs playoff run. And don't you think he wants to be able to do that? Like, does he care enough about that to have that impact this at all?
I think this is bigger than that, to be honest with you, right? He's talking about the trajectory of his career, which is going to probably be more important than comfort, right? Which, I mean, he doesn't have to sit on the sidelines if he wants to go and support the Cavs. He can sit in the suite. He could be back there, right? He could be a little bit more hidden. So I don't know how much of this factors in. Like, I don't really think the Cavs thing in any way is really a factor for Myles Garret, because, you know, it's more of a PR kind of deal that he's a minority owner, in the same way that Usher is a minority owner at the Cavs, right? It's more of a brand deal than it is like true equity in the Cleveland Cavaliers. So it's probably something that he could detach himself from if he needs to. And right now, I think he's going to spend most of his spring and summer probably outside Cleveland in LA like he normally does, and enjoy his offseason that way, and maybe just watch the Cavs from afar, as he probably doesn't want to, like, I would imagine, and I would hope he tries to avoid becoming a distraction for that team, right? Like the Cavs, if he has any care about who's there. Now, if he does do something like show up at a Cavs game and the Cavs lose a big game that they weren't expected to lose, then he's inviting all kind of hell to himself, right? Like, it just don't really see it as a win for him either way to really show up. Even if he gets the contract done, everything, like, there's a chance that, like, until you start playing again, people reminded that you're Myles Garret, that they might boo you, right? Like, this is Cleveland we're talking about. We're easy to boo. Like, I think people need to understand that when we boo, it's not that big of a deal, right? Like, it's not the biggest. We boo everybody. We will boo anybody. If Tom Brady were in his prime and he goes 3 and out 4 times, we're gonna boo Tom Brady, right? Sure. And I think we just need to. I think people need to learn to take it a little bit less personal, because it ain't that deep. We boo people all the time, and then, like, oh no, we actually love that dude, right? How many times did Baker Mayfield get booed, and people still love him to this day? He don't even play here anymore. So yeah, like, he probably gonna get booed a little bit. It depends on what the vibes are in the stadium at that point. So I would avoid it, but I don't really think that's something he should consider in this whole thing. I think he should really just consider, hey man, how far are you willing to take it? I think that's the biggest question he needs to ask. Are you willing to miss out a season? Are you willing to take that sacrifice on your cumulative totals, right? A lot of the active streaks that you have, are you willing to let all of that go? These things that are vital to your Hall of Fame argument, in a chance to maybe force your way to a Hall of Fame team? Or are you willing to take a deal that maybe makes you stay in Cleveland for a couple of years, but allows you the freedom to go where you want at the end of it? I think that would be a more attractive offer to him if you're willing to make that case. And I think the Browns will make some kind of case similar to that, but it's going to take getting to that point, and they're not going to get to that point overnight. Like, this is going to take a lot of fighting to get to that point. I think that's ultimately where we end up, because it makes sense for both sides. But yeah, like, it's going to get ugly. I said this at the beginning of this thing. I think people were like, well, is it going to get ugly? It's already gotten ugly. And I think for Myles, he was like, I want to avoid it getting ugly. I said this the day he started doing it. It got ugly already. You just aren't aware of where this train is headed, but you're rolling downhill on them tracks and there's no brakes. So this stuff, inevitable, because they were always going to be on opposite sides of the spectrum when it comes to this trade request. The question is, how ugly does it get? How catastrophic does it get? The Browns aren't going to play into it, right? They're like, hey, meet with Andrew Berry. We're not going to make this uglier than it has to. Andrew's in charge of this. He's the one making the decision. He's going to, like, it's going to be, the onus is going to be on Myles to make this thing uglier and uglier. And that's where you have to question, like, hey, how willing is Myles going to be portrayed as the bad guy? Because that's going to happen if he takes the steps that will even make them consider trading him this offseason.
Yep. That great point. Well said. Perfectly said. Good stuff. Very interesting, all of it, and we'll keep an eye on all that. All right, last question for you tonight, Q. I just wanted to bring this stuff up. There's a couple names been floated around here, and like, you know, what you can believe right now is few and far between out there. So, but you know, I feel like the Flacco name has been thrown back into the mix. I don't know as what, like, competition. I don't know if they're talking as a starter or what. And then I've heard Carson Wentz.
Maybe as a coach. Maybe we need another position coach.
QB coach. Carson Wentz, his name is also out there. Do either of these names do anything for you?
I wouldn't mind Joe Flacco as like a backup. Yeah. Carson Wentz, I'm completely uninterested in that move entirely. So yeah, I would be out on Carson Wentz. Joe Flacco, there's a little bit of intrigue there because, you know, the relationship between him and Kevin is really strong. I just wouldn't trust it for a whole season. If you want to bring in somebody like I think he's in that tier that Jacoby Brissett's in, where it's like, hey, definitely you drafted the quarterback at 2. right? If you bring in Jacoby Brissett, if you start Joe Flacco, it is because you plan to switch to somebody 6 to 8 weeks into the season,
mid-season,
right?
Yeah.
You want to give that guy an extra training camp, basically, right? A 6 to 8 week period to get prepared to play, and then you're going to put that guy in about halfway through the season. That's where that falls into, right? Where Kirk Cousins, to me, I think is a full year option. Anything past that with Kirk is not guaranteed, but I think you can squeeze out a full year with Kirk if you had to.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm with you. I'm totally out on Carson Wentz. I've never, that definitely not there. But bringing Flacco back in the way that you just laid it out makes some sense. Yes, I think he could win you some games in a 6 to 8 game.
You're not going to be incompetent because Joe Flacco is out there. And I think, look, Brad, you tell me, I get that quarterback play wasn't the only thing that went wrong, right? Obviously, there were other things that went wrong, and we need to pay attention to those things, and those things didn't matter. But when people bring up like some of the bad offensive stats that the Browns had, if they just got mediocre quarterback play, it's so much better. Yeah, it's directly tied to the fact that you started 2 quarterbacks last year for the majority of your games that were arguably the 2 worst quarterbacks in the NFL to have played extended snaps that season, in Dorian Thompson-Robinson, in Deshaun Watson. And yeah, if you do draft a rookie, I think that rookie will be significantly better than those 2 were there. Now, the upside with the rookie is what you have to consider, but I think Kirk Cousins is going to be significantly better than that. Joe Flacco would be significantly better than that. Even somebody like Jameis Winston was significantly better than that, right? Sam Darnold was significantly better than that. Hell, Aaron Rodgers would be significantly better than that, but you didn't bring in all the stuff of Aaron Rodgers. I don't think anybody wants to deal with fresh off Deshaun Watson, right? Nope. And we still got him on the roster for a year or 2, right? So, I just don't think that's something that people want to invite. But, like, there's a lot of options. I mean, Russell Wilson would be a significant upgrade to the quarterback play that you had last year. And Russell Wilson's not very good anymore. But Justin Fields would be an upgrade. Like, the amount that you're going to have to upgrade regardless from quarterback from last year is going to be significant, because whoever you're going to get, you expect to be at a mediocre level of quarterback play at the NFL at the very least. And you didn't even get mediocre last year. You got something significantly below that. Yeah.
That's a great point. Very true. That's all you got to do. And, listen, keep it locked at the OBR. We will have wall-to-wall coverage of the legal tampering period, the stupidest name period.
It's a crazy term, isn't it?
Yeah, it's wild. The legal tampering period. And then the actual league year begins, and all of the fun that comes with that is we'll have an extra show on Monday night. If you want to hop in queue at 9:00, we're going to do an opening kind of an opening ceremony, not an opening ceremony, but a special free agency special on Monday night at 9. Anybody's welcome. So we'll be here doing it along with all your regularly scheduled programs here at the OBR Streaming Network. Big thanks to Quincy Carrier. Always fantastic. Follow him on Twitter at Quincy. For Q, my name is Brad Ward. This has been another edition of Things I Think I Know About the Browns. We are out.